Your delivery driver. I deadpanned into the receiver, trying to keep my voice steady. Has been kidnapped by a rogue band of pirates. Yes, pirates. We're working on it, but it might delay your pepperoni a bit. Silence stretched on the other end, thick with disbelief. Then the woman's voice, already strained from a night of increasingly bizarre phone calls, erupted. Pirates? Are you out of your mind? I just want my damn pizza. Put your manager on the phone this instant. Yeah, this was my life for a solid week, and it all started because I got a cheap landline. See, I'm Bryce. Just a regular dude who recently upgraded his internet and cable package. They offered a super cheap landline add-on, and I figured, why not? Might be useful for emergencies or, just to have. So I went out, bought a basic corded phone, plugged it in, and thought nothing more of it. That is, until the calls started. My new number, I soon discovered, was just one digit off from the local Domino's. At first, I thought it was kind of a funny coincidence. A few wrong numbers, sure, but no big deal. Then the first pizza-related call came in. Yeah, I want to order a large pepperoni, half sausage, half mushroom, a gruff voice grumbled. My initial instinct was to just correct him, tell him he had the wrong number, but something clicked in my brain. A little mischievous imp whispered, "Wouldn't it be funny, Bryce? Just for a second." So, I leaned into it. Domino's, this is Bryce speaking. What can I get for you tonight, sir? The guy paused. A large pepperoni, he repeated his order, sounding a little confused, but otherwise going along with it. I kept up the charade, confirming toppings, asking about crusts. I even offered him a completely bogus buy one, get one free on all pizzas over $20 deal. He started getting a little antsy, asking if I was new, why the price was different. I just blamed system updates and new regional promotions. Eventually, he got genuinely frustrated and hung up with a huff. I actually snickered. What a goof. I figured that was the end of it. Nope. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same number. My heart gave a little thrill. He called back. This was it. This was my moment to truly commit. I answered, adopting my most professional yet slightly harried pizza guy voice. Domino's. Bryce here. How can I help you? Look, I just called, and your prices are all wrong and you keep making weird deals. What is going on? The guy roared, clearly escalating from frustrated to outright angry. Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience, I said, barely suppressing a giggle. It appears we're having a particularly challenging night. In fact, our last delivery driver was just, held hostage. Dead silence. Then a sputtering sound. Held hostage? What in the blue hell are you talking about? I just want a pizza. Yes, sir, it's quite unfortunate, I continued, now fully committed. We've had to notify the authorities. You understand, pizza is serious business. We can't have our valuable drivers being detained. His response was a primal yell, a demand to speak to my manager, followed by the clatter of him slamming down his phone. I hung up, tears streaming down my face from laughing so hard. That was the night the pizza prank war began. The calls didn't stop. That guy, or maybe a whole string of increasingly agitated customers, kept dialing. My phone became a hot potato of absurd excuses and escalating anger. At first, it was pure, unadulterated fun. I was telling people their order was lost in a wormhole, that the cheese had unionized, that the delivery drone had been attacked by a flock of seagulls demanding tribute. Each time, the caller's frustration mounted, their demands for a manager becoming more urgent, more unhinged, and each time I found it harder and harder to stop. It was like I was addicted to the chaos. But then, the novelty wore thin. It was like 11 p.m. I was trying to unwind, maybe watch some Netflix, and the damn thing just kept ringing. Ring, ring, ring. I'd unplug the handset, hoping for peace. But then, a few minutes of quiet, and the thought would nag at me, what if it's actually important? What if it's not a pizza call? So I'd plug it back in, and within seconds, ring, ring, ring. I started getting genuinely annoyed. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a siege. My phone had become a portal to a dimension of hangry, entitled customers, and I, Bryce, was their unwitting, unwilling pizza demigod. I tried just answering normally, telling them they had the wrong number. "No, you have the wrong number. Is this Domino's or not?" They'd shriek. Arguing was pointless. They were convinced I was just messing with them, or I was a lazy employee refusing to take their order. So I leaned back into the absurdity. If they wanted a manager, I became the manager. A gruff, no-nonsense manager who informed them their pizza had spontaneously combusted due to excessive enthusiasm, or that the dough had achieved sentience and refused to be baked. The pirate incident was my personal masterpiece, the culmination of a week of mounting sleep deprivation and a sheer, desperate need for these calls to stop. The woman who demanded my manager after the pirate story wasn't just angry, she sounded truly deranged. "I'm coming down there. I'm going to find this Domino's and I'm going to tell your manager what a terrible lying employee you are." My blood ran cold. She's going to come to Domino's. Not my house, thankfully, but still. This had gone too far. My prank had created a monster. I didn't answer the phone again that night. I just let it ring, and ring, and ring. The incessant, piercing sound became the soundtrack to my panic. What if she really did show up? What if she caused a scene? What if the actual Domino's got involved? The next morning, with dark circles under my eyes and a lingering phantom ringing in my ears, I did the only sensible thing I could think of. I called the phone company. "Yes, I'd like to cancel my landline service," I said, trying to sound calm, professional, and not at all like a man who had spent a week telling people their pizza was being held for ransom by mythical creatures. "It's just not really working out for me." They didn't ask questions. I imagine they get plenty of people changing their minds about cheap landlines. The relief when they confirmed the line would be disconnected was immense. The silence that followed in my apartment was deafening. No more rings. No more angry pizza fanatics. No more pirates. Sometimes, late at night when I'm reaching for my cell phone, I still hear a faint, ghostly ring, ring, ring in the back of my mind, and I shudder. I still get a kick out of telling the story, though. Just, don't ask me for pizza recommendations. I might offer you a deal you can't refuse, or a tale of intergalactic delivery sabotage. You've been warned.
This next one had Reddit losing its mind. Quick pause, subscribe now, because the chaos doesn't stop here.
The moment she sauntered up to the counter, I knew my quiet Tuesday was about to spontaneously combust. Karen, because of course, her name had to be Karen, had that specific pinched look of someone whose day wasn't going her way, and it was absolutely my fault. Never mind, I was just standing there, minding my own business, barely looking at a display of overpriced candles. My mistake, I guess, was existing within her line of sight while wearing a sensible jacket and not a neon sign proclaiming, "I do not work here, lady." She just stopped. Didn't say excuse me, didn't even bother with eye contact at first. Her gaze swept over me like I was part of the furniture, then finally landed, narrowed. "You. Get me the manager. Now." Her voice was like gravel grinding on a chalkboard, dripping with a superiority complex you could practically taste. I blinked. Look, I'm Julianne, and yeah, in my actual line of work, I deal with demanding people all the time, but usually they've committed a crime. Here I was, just trying to enjoy 5 minutes of peace on my day off, and suddenly I was the designated complaint department. I kept my voice level, the way you do when you're dealing with someone who's already decided you're the enemy. "Ma'am, I actually don't work here. I'm just a customer." Karen's perfectly sculpted brows shot up. Her eyes, magnified by chunky glasses, practically bulged. "Don't work here? Don't be ridiculous. You're standing right at the counter, and you're dressed. Well, you're dressed plainly enough to be an employee. I demand to speak to someone in charge about the utterly atrocious service I received earlier." She waved a dismissive hand, as if my very presence was an affront. My jaw tightened. Okay, the polite "I don't work here" had failed. Time for phase 2, which usually involved a slightly firmer tone and a gentle suggestion to find an actual employee. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but I really can't help you. I'm not an employee of this store. You'll need to locate someone wearing a uniform or a name tag. I even pointed vaguely towards the main floor, where an actual sales associate was chatting with a customer. But Karen wasn't having it. Her face was starting to get that familiar splotchy red. Oh, I see how it is. You're trying to dodge your responsibilities. Probably new, aren't you? Or just utterly incompetent. I'll just wait here until a real manager comes to deal with this, because clearly you are no help at all. She crossed her arms, dug her heels in, and glared at me, daring me to challenge her. It was that classic I'm not moving stance that sends shivers down the spines of retail workers everywhere. Except again, I don't work here. And while my patience isn't exactly infinite on a good day, today after a particularly grueling night shift, it was practically non-existent. My brain, bless its exhausted heart, flicked through options, walk away, tempting, but she was blocking the aisle. Yell for an actual employee, she'd probably just yell louder, or, well, there was always the nuclear option. My hand instinctively went to the small badge clipped to my belt loop, usually hidden under my sweater, but visible enough if you knew where to look. A calm, almost serene feeling washed over me. I met her glare, and a little smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. Ma'am, I said, my voice dropping, losing all traces of retail politeness and gaining a certain, shall we say, authority. I've already told you I don't work here. I paused. Letting that sink in, then leaned in slightly, just enough to be conspiratorial, but also to make sure she really got it. In fact, I'm an off-duty police officer. Karen's eyes went wide. The color drained from her face faster than you could say entitlement. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a fish out of water. Her formidable posture crumbled. I can't help you with your complaint about the store's service, I continued, my voice unwavering. But if you continue to harass me or refuse to leave this area after being told you're causing a disturbance, I can absolutely help you with a disorderly conduct charge. Her jaw worked, trying to find words. All that came out was a pathetic, "Officer? I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." The transformation was instantaneous, her bluster replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. Good, I said, with a crisp nod. Now, I suggest you find an actual employee to assist you, or perhaps reconsider your attitude before you upset someone who is on duty. She practically tripped over her own feet, spinning around and half walking, half scurrying out of the store, a trail of muttered apologies and frantic whispers about filing a complaint against her in her wake. I watched her go, a genuine chuckle bubbling up. Sometimes the truth, delivered with just the right amount of fed-up sass, is the best white lie you can tell. And honestly, my badge just makes it even better.
The phone buzzed, cutting through the usual drone of the conservation site. It was a problem, of course, they always were. A structural issue significant enough that I, David, the lead subcontractor on this historic Grade 1 listed property, needed to be briefed by the site manager immediately. I was halfway to his office, my mind already running through potential solutions, when a voice boomed, stopping me dead in my tracks. "Hey, David." I turned to see him, Mr. Davies, owner of AAC Limited, the primary contractor. He was a man who carried himself like the world was his personal stage, and everyone else just a prop. His grin, if you could call it that, didn't quite reach his eyes. "I hear you're the man working on my precious property. I'd love to chat with you about it." The word chat was stretched, a thinly veiled command. Polite as always, I nodded and followed him to his lavishly decorated office. He gestured to a chair opposite his imposing desk, then leaned back, a smug look spreading across his face. "You know, David," he began, "I'm the owner here. The one calling the shots? And honestly, I deserve the best treatment. So why don't you pop out and get me a coffee? Black, no sugar." I blinked. Had I heard that right? I wasn't an employee of AAC, nor was I his personal assistant. "Mr. Davies," I said, keeping my voice level, "I don't actually work for AAC Limited. I'm a subcontractor running my own team on this project." His smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "What do you mean you don't work for us? You're here on my site, working on my property."
You're here to do my bidding, and right now that means getting me a coffee. His tone left no room for debate. He clearly wasn't used to being told no. With all due respect, sir, that's not part of my contractual obligations, I replied, a spark of defiance igniting within me. I'm not going to get you a coffee. My team and I are here to complete the conservation work. Nothing more, nothing less. His face went from red to a dangerous shade of purple. He shot upright, slamming his hand on the desk. Fine, you're fired. Get out of my office. I'll find someone else who understands how things work around here. It was such a blatant abuse of power, so utterly ridiculous, that I almost laughed. Instead, my hand instinctively went to my phone, already recording. Just to be clear, I said calmly, making sure the mic caught every word, you're firing me, David, a subcontractor, for refusing to get you a coffee? Yes, get out, he roared. I nodded, satisfied, and walked out. The first person I saw was Mark, the site manager, looking frazzled. I pulled him aside, played the recording. His jaw dropped. I can't believe he just fired you for that. David, this is insane. Insane, maybe, I agreed, but it's also a breach of contract. And I won't be returning to this site until I receive a face-to-face apology from Mr. Davies and full payment for the time my team and I were scheduled to be here, plus any additional work we've put in. Mark, caught between a rock and an even harder place, spent the next few days in a frantic state, relaying increasingly desperate messages from Mr. Davies. First, it was veiled threats, then vague apologies offered through Mark, then an offer of payment without the apology. I stood firm. Face to face, Mark, and the full payment. Otherwise, my team and I are out. Predictably, Mark couldn't make it happen. Mr. Davies, too proud and too stupid, refused to back down. A week later, I heard Mark had been fired too, unable to manage the fallout. Mr. Davies then tried to intimidate me directly, leaving me aggressive voicemails talking about legal action. I simply forwarded them to the company's operations director, detailing everything, including the recording of my firing. The operations director, thankfully, was a more reasonable man. He called me personally, a genuine apology in his voice. He offered to renegotiate my contract, even to bring me back on. Look, David, I'm truly sorry for Davies' behavior. It's completely unacceptable. Can we find a way to make this right? But by then, the whole situation had soured too much. I appreciate the apology, I told him, but I can't in good conscience return to a site where Mr. Davies still holds sway. My reputation and my team's is too important. Weeks passed. I'd moved on to another project, but I kept an ear to the ground about the listed building. I soon learned that Mr. Davies, desperate to finish the project and save face, had hired a cut-rate Bulgarian contractor. That raised a red flag immediately. Grade 1 listed properties require very specific, highly skilled work. I made a few discreet calls. The planning department, then the actual building owner, were very interested in my concerns. I explained the situation, from the unprofessional firing to the suspiciously rapid cut-price completion by an unknown contractor. The investigation was swift. Site inspections revealed significant issues. The work done by the replacement contractor was, as expected, substandard and a serious risk to the historical integrity of the property. Mr. Davies was interviewed under caution, as was his project manager. The repercussions were severe. AAC Limited's contract was terminated, and Mr. Davies himself was fired by the company he owned. The building owner, now thoroughly disgusted, issued new tenders for all the remaining conservation work. Mark, by some stroke of luck, was offered a new, better job at a different company, escaping the wreckage. And me? I found myself eventually bidding on those new tenders, and thanks to my reputation for quality and integrity, my company secured a significant portion of the work. It just goes to show, sometimes standing your ground, even over a cup of coffee, can reveal much more about the character of the people you're dealing with. And sometimes, it pays off in the most satisfying ways imaginable.
This next story is just as wild. Give it a watch.